Hello everybody, welcome back to Planet X News. This is Scott from the Nibiru channel. It's July 17th, 2017, and our current time is 9:50 p.m. Listen folks, I had planned on bringing several live streams today based on what happened yesterday, and there has been so much internet disruptions, electrical disruptions, things of that nature around the world. A lot of these things we talked about yesterday in all of our reporting. Late yesterday, I was doing a few things on YouTube with my channels, making some updates, and then all of a sudden, the whole entire YouTube screen went blank. My channels disappeared. You couldn't do anything on YouTube for several hours. Then it came back up. And then very early this morning, at least on my end, YouTube was gone, completely gone. So I later found out through a YouTube representative that they did have some big issues there today. I guess their maintenance crews were working on it nonstop. They are still having some issues as far as I know. I've been trying to do this live stream now for approximately 3 hours. I do have a pre-recorded video that I wanted to share during this live stream. It is still processing because the internet right now is just so slow. And there are major things happening around the world already. We talked about this yesterday. It would take a little bit of time for this energy to catch up, penetrate the earth, and then we were going to start having these larger earthquakes, probably preceded by some volcanic eruptions. There's another coronal hole on the sun. This sunspot 2665 is still super active. We're actually thinking that, hey, it's a 24-day trip around the sun. What's not to say that 2665 makes its way right back around the sun in the next 20 days, 22 days, and now we're Earth facing it again. It's possible. It's still producing a lot of action. There are worldwide disruptions as far as internet service, cell phone service, GPS, power outages. It's happening around the world. And again, folks, just like I said and the doctor said, it would take a little while for this to start. Now, just not too long ago, 40 minutes ago, an hour ago, a magnitude 7.6, 7.7, 7.8 goes off right off the coast of Russia, right at the end of the tail of islands off of the state of Alaska, the Aleutian Islands. Very shallow quakes, folks, very shallow. I mean, this can be a horrible situation with a swarm of earthquakes in that area, with the rest of the energy making its way directly across the Pacific Ocean. And look what is right there. Cascadia. They're already having issues there. If any of you watch Dutch Sense, he was erupting about the situation there. I think it was in today's report that he did, or it might have been yesterday, but one of these days, I'm getting my days mixed up. But yeah, he was pretty upset about, missing data up there in that area. I knew it was just a matter of time. These things are going to start to occur. And the best that we can do, try to ride this out. But I think this is going to be, something that could possibly last the entire week. But what I want to go ahead and do while this video that I have for you guys is processing, I want to take a look at what is happening. So I was not able to get on Chrome, any kind of Google product at all for the last 4 hours. Now, this is the current map that we're looking at for the earthquakes. We just have another one 13 minutes ago, magnitude 3.5. They're having some pretty big quakes up here in Alaska, magnitude 3.8. There was a pretty good one that just went off. Oh, it's going to update again. You know, I've never seen this map update as many times, and usually when it's whenever this is happening, it's doing this. That means there's more and more quakes happening, and they try to keep this map live. Well, there we go, right there, 8 minutes ago, magnitude 3.5. So, as I was thinking, I'm going to roll you on over here, and we're going to take a look at what is actually happening in Russia. There's so many quakes now occurring right off of this island. They're stacked on top of each other. For magnitude 7.6, 5.3, 7.4, 7.4, 7.7, magnitude 5, magnitude 4.4, 5.2, 5.1. So many earthquakes like this, folks, stacked on top of each other in a real tight swarm. That's a bad sign. You know, that's a real bad sign. Those magnitude 7 earthquakes, you know, if you pay attention to Dutch sense and you learn some things about earthquakes, that's a pretty good size earthquake. We were hoping that we were not going to be getting into these magnitude 7s, but folks, you know, that energy has the potential to stretch directly across this portion of the Pacific Ocean. We know there are weak zones here. We have the Cascadia fault line, the Juan de Fuca fault line. That's not that far of a distance. You know, we see the same thing when we see the earthquakes in the South Pacific, these deep earthquakes over here. That energy transfer moves right into the western coast of South America. We see it over and over and over. It's almost like a little V shape. You know, the energy just goes boom, boom, and the next thing you know, days later, they're getting the quakes on this side of the world. Multiple magnitude 7s up here. That's just bad news positioning wise for this region. Cascadia lies there, Juan de Fuca lies there, and then, you know, they're all connected into San Andreas. If this all starts rocking, what do you think San Andreas fault line is going to do? Just sit there and kick back and watch? No, we'll probably have issues moving all the way into Southern California. So, you know, the situation is not looking good, but it was to be expected. I wanted to take a look real quick, show you some of the magnetopause. There is another wave of energy coming in, you know, more solar wind, and we're already seeing the fluctuations once again on the magnetopause. Not as dramatic as it was yesterday. You know, that was pretty dramatic stuff, man. That was some things I've never seen before in my life, and I've been looking at these models for many, many years, learning all of the information, what to look for, what I'm looking at. Once again, you know, we're seeing some weird situations here. I mean, this is like a relatively very, very, very low density. I mean, it's very, very strange what you're seeing here. It's not normal. This is not what the normal magnetosphere, this Y-cut model looks like. However, the black lines that we see here, they are in a nice formation like they should be, streaming behind our planet. But you do see some activity there. We'll take a look at the solar wind. Yeah, the solar wind earlier, when I was able to get on the ISWA site here, they were actually down for a little while. You weren't even able to get on their website. So that's why there was a lot of delays, no videos going up. It was just too difficult to utilize the internet. at least where I am. And we had some of the solar wind speeds approximately 1.5 million miles per hour. Now, from looking at some of the other models earlier, we're actually looking at some of this slowing down. But again, folks, what we're looking at here on the screen now really won't impact us with earthquakes, volcanoes, things of that nature for a day or even 2 days later. Once these particles head deep into the earth, that's it. You're going to get the heating up of the core. And after what went down yesterday, well, you're seeing the high magnitude 7 earthquakes. It was definitely inevitable. It was going to happen. Now the issue is, more and more and more of this stacked on top of each other day after day. Well, that's not going to be a good situation. We get another big coronal hole turning towards our planet. More issues as far as earthquakes. The Earth not even getting a chance to rest one bit. It's going to be like that domino effect, folks. That's the way I see it. I don't know about you, but that's the way I see it. There was another small coronal mass ejection that was caught on the coronagraph LASCO. Small, but it came right out of AR 2665, the same sunspot that's creating the havoc right now. Imagine this sunspot gaining more energy as it rotates all the way around the sun, and in approximately 20 days from now, we're facing it again. It's a possibility. It's a big possibility. But it's going to be very interesting throughout the night. Now, as soon as this other video that I have set up for you guys processes, let me just take a look and see if it's almost done. Everything is so slow as far as I'm concerned on the internet. And it's going to be a little while before this is completely processed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run the earthquake 3D tracker for a short time. And then whenever this video that I'm going to live stream for you guys is prepared, I'll just slip it right in here and you guys can check it out. There are several pieces in that video where you're going to listen to Major Ed Dames, and he's going to talk about the kill shot and his remote viewing. And he spent 20 years in the United States military, secret special ops as a remote viewer. Very, very interesting. He's very intriguing to listen to, very, very believable. And some of the things he's talking about when he did this interview a few years ago, well, it seems like we're almost living in it. But I thought I would include those 3 clips for any of you that have never listened to Ed. He's a pretty wild character. I think you'll definitely enjoy it. If you're looking for any other type of video information on him, just go to the search engine in YouTube. Type in Major Ed Dames, Dames, and check him out. He's been around for quite a long time. He's very, very interesting personality, and very, very smart, very intelligent. And if you find the remote viewing interesting, definitely check it out. Well, listen, folks, I'm going to cut you loose here for a little while with the earthquake 3D. You can see those big earthquakes up there in off the coast of Russia. I'm going to leave this up here also. You'll be able to identify earthquakes by looking at this square box. Whenever you hear the bell go off, you'll see them right here. But as soon as this video is processed, I'm going to go ahead and upload it right into this live stream for you guys to check it out. So I'll be back with you in a little bit.
I began to push even forward in time, over the horizon, the future. Can remote viewing, how effective is it against future events? I was looking ahead to see if we could put together an outline for our bosses of events over the horizon. We were particularly interested in military events, not necessarily civil, social and economic events, particularly military. Viewers began to pick up on a very large event that at first I thought was a nuclear war or something geophysically tragic that affected the globe. It took a lot of work, a lot of analysis to collect information about what this huge event was that affects the entire planet too. So we were getting closer to discerning what we were dealing with. We began looking closer at this. We began to sketch a spherical object that was very big. I thought, oh, maybe this is a comet. Certainly not a meteor, because it's on fire. And it's the thing that's going to affect this event that we're picking up in the future. So we did some more work on it. It wasn't a comet. It was big and on fire and right next door in our neck of the woods. It was our own star, the sun.
Specifically, viewers foresaw a series of solar flares that are so powerful they penetrated into Earth's atmosphere, destroying global communications and heating up regions of the world to such an extreme that it would cause the deaths of billions. Our star, man's source of life, would now become our greatest enemy.
Of course we continued this work about, how could we not? And we were concerned about exactly the nature of it. How survivable, if at all, was it? How many would survive and under what circumstances? Those kinds of things. And especially, how far out in the future were we looking at? Was this 500 years, 50 years, 5 years, 5 months? I began to push even forward in time, over the horizon, the future.
The North Korean prediction appears capable of coming to pass any year now, but there is another event that remote viewers fear the most, a sign that the kill shot is imminent.
What would be that final recognizable event just prior to the kill shot sequence? The best that we could come up with, pushing ahead, the best that we could come up with was what appeared to be a space shuttle being forced down by what appears to be a meteor shower or something like that. For those of you who are not remote viewers, let me give you a little bit of insight into what remote viewing is in terms of a skill set. Most of the information that we derive from a target is in terms of word idea concepts, patterns of information that we perceive and turn into word, search our memory for words and apply those words, a written word on a piece of paper, and move on. The information we had that led us to believe that we're dealing with a space shuttle as a final precursor event to space shuttle coming down, as a final precursor event to the kill shot, was a collection of those rough sketches. So analytically, we're saying it looks like a space shuttle coming down.
As a result, there had been some confusion by not only the public, but also many remote viewers. The session sketches generated had resulted in the assumption that the craft being forced down was a U.S. space shuttle, since it was unique to the world at the time of the prediction.
Our sketches and drawings look like the current, very similar to the current U.S. space shuttle vehicles. There are some variations among viewers too, but we know that the Air Force has another program now, a nascent program. I think it's a spy vehicle that's up there, a maneuverable vehicle. That particular vehicle also looks like the U.S. space shuttle, the manned space shuttles.
Today, the recent U.S. space shuttle design is being emulated by many different space agencies around the globe, both government-oriented and private. No longer is the design unique to the U.S. space program, but the precursor itself remains the same. When a shuttle-like craft is forced down from orbit, the kill shot will begin.
When you see these particular events happen, that last one in particular, we don't know how much longer it will be until the kill shot, because mind is outside of time. The best that we could do is say this event is the last big one that you'll see as remote viewers before this kill shot sequence happens. Regardless of how long it is, that period between this shuttle event and the beginning of the kill shot sequence, we know as viewers, and I have personally viewed this particular event a number of times because it's so powerful, that all of these warring parties that we see on the planet, all these many wars, that on the ground, all of these soldiers look up in the sky. They all look up. So something is happening in the sky. In fact, there's probably unprecedented atmospheric effects that in a recorded history, perhaps an unrecorded history, there's been events like this, but nothing in recorded history. Something happens in the atmosphere that has not been seen before, because all these soldiers are looking up, and then they go home. Their priorities change. They go home. So that's when it starts. This kill shot sequence will cripple communications worldwide. It will take out satellite communications in a very short order. Power grids, we're all aware of what it will do to power grids and what it has done in the past. And in certain instances, go back and check it out. Power grids will go down. There's many people over many months of time, and throughout the world will have no power. There are cities without power and communication. You can figure out for yourself what that will mean too. Not only will you not be able to pump gas, not only will you not be able to pump water, not only will there not be food on the shelves because there'd be no gas in the trucks to take the food to the cities, but I could go on and on.
The North Korean prediction appears capable of coming to pass any year now.
There are some tangential effects that we're picking up also as remote viewers, and have picked up over the years. Apparently, the center of the Earth, the core of the Earth, is changing rapidly as an effect of what is happening on the sun. And if that's the case, then we're probably looking at, as an adjunct to effect to the kill shot sequence, we're probably looking at massive volcanism and earthquakes as well. And I think it's very important to point out, and very important indeed, because of the adiabatic heating of the atmosphere, we're going to have very high winds in many parts of the Earth. The sky, the sun, the light will be obscured. It will be very difficult to grow crops on the surface because of both winds and lighting conditions. Solar physicists were chewing their nails because they were very concerned that the sun had been very quiet for so long, and this was not predictable. And so because it was not predicted, it did not follow the solar cycle, they were afraid that the sun might be doing something erratic. And that's when we began to see in the press and the news all these warnings about what major solar flares would do to the planet, to communications, to power grids, etc. And then in the last few months, we've seen that the sun's been relatively quiet. And now the scientists are saying, well, maybe the sun is going into a long period, years of quiescence. It's going to quiet down, and that's what we're seeing. And that might create global cooling. That may be why there's been the storms, snowstorms have been so severe, because the sun's quieter and not as active. Folks, it's the calm before the storm. It is the calm before the storm. The kill shot effects, and these will come and go, but the massive damage, first of all, will be to communications. Communications satellites, military satellites as well, will go down. We're not talking about single event latch-ups where you have a couple of semiconductors go bad. No, these things will be fried. Anybody in space, whether you're inside that little leaded shield on a space station or not, you're fried. You're in bad shape. You're going to die. Okay. So communication, power grids. Power grids, when they go down, folks, when the sun takes the power grids down, it's done it before. This time they won't go back up. It'll be months and months, if not years, to get power grids back up and running. There's going to be no power. Okay, so you'll need some. If you live in a place where it's going to be cold, you're going to need fuel to stay warm. So there's a lot of planning to do, folks. I would encourage you to start now, if not yesterday. I also want to point out that there's going to be most probably unprecedented geophysical events when this kill shot sequence starts. Earth can only take so much of protons hitting its magnetosphere, and on top of that, you're going to have X-rays that will be at Earth in 10 minutes, right? Now, we don't know how powerful those X-rays will be. But we do know that those protons will be extremely powerful, that mass from the sun. So we're looking at anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, perhaps sometimes longer, depending on the velocity of the flare itself, before that actually impinges upon Earth's atmosphere and begins to heat it up. When the heating occurs, after that's done, that's when the power grids begin to go down. That's the X-rays themselves will take out satellites if they're powerful X-ray flares. There are some tangential effects that we're picking up also as remote viewers and have picked up over the years. Apparently, the center of the Earth, the core of the Earth, is changing rapidly as an effect of what is happening on the sun. And if that's the case, then we're probably looking at, as an adjunct to effect to the kill shot sequence, we're probably looking at massive volcanism and earthquakes as well. And I think it's very important to point out, and very important indeed, because of the adiabatic heating of the atmosphere, we're going to have very high winds in many parts of the Earth. The sky, the sun, the light will be obscured. It will be very difficult to grow crops on the surface because of both winds and lighting conditions. Solar physicists were chewing their nails because they were very, very concerned that the sun had been very quiet for so long and this was not predictable. And so because it was not predicted, it did not follow the solar cycle, they were afraid that the sun might be doing something erratic. And that's when we began to see in the press and the news all these warnings about what major solar flares would do to the planet, to communications, to power grids, etc. And then in the last few months, we've seen that the sun's been relatively quiet. And now the scientists are saying, well, maybe the sun is going into a long period, years of quiescence. It's going to quiet down, and that's what we're seeing. And that might create global cooling. That may be why there's been the storms, snowstorms have been so severe, because the sun's quieter and not as active. Folks, it's the calm before the storm. It is the calm before the storm. The kill shot effects, and these will come and go, but the massive damage, first of all, will be to communications. Communication satellites, military satellites as well, will go down. We're not talking about single event latch-ups where you have a couple of semiconductors go bad. No, these things will be fried. Anybody in space, whether you're inside that little leaded shield on a space station or not, you're fried. You're in bad shape. You're going to die. Okay. So communication, power grids. Power grids, when they go down, folks, when the sun takes the power grids down, it's done it before. This time they won't go back up. It'll be months and months, if not years, to get power grids back up and running. There's going to be no power. Okay, so you'll need If you live in a place where it's going to be cold, you're going to need fuel to stay warm. So there's a lot of planning to do, folks. I would encourage you to start now, if not yesterday. I also want to point out that there's going to be most probably unprecedented geophysical events when this kill shot sequence starts. Earth can only take so much of protons hitting its magnetosphere, and on top of that, you're going to have X-rays that will be at Earth in 10 minutes, right? Now, we don't know how powerful those X-rays will be, but we do know that those protons will be extremely powerful, that mass from the sun. So we're looking at anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, perhaps, sometimes longer, depending on the velocity of the flare itself, before that actually impinges upon Earth's atmosphere and begins to heat it up. When the heating occurs, after that's done, that's when the power grids begin to go down. That's the X-rays themselves will take out satellites if they're powerful X-ray flares. There are some tangential
Latest Planet X 2016 breaking news. Ed Dames, Black Swan Song. He says
is a very infamous concentration camp. Others to meet world standards. It's a cover for construction activities near these concentration camps, and one of them was Yodok, an RV community, and see the well, only to don't do it. We would be in big trouble then. So the hands off.
There are some tangential effects that we're picking up also as remote viewers and have picked up over the years. Apparently, the center of the Earth, the core of the Earth, is changing rapidly as an effect of what is happening on the sun. And if that's the case, then we're probably looking at, as an adjunct to effect to the kill shot sequence, we're probably looking at massive volcanism and earthquakes as well. And I think it's very important to point out, and very important indeed, because of the adiabatic heating of the atmosphere, we're going to have very high winds in many parts of the Earth. The sky, the sun, the light will be obscured. It will be very difficult to grow crops on the surface because of both winds and lighting conditions. Solar physicists were chewing their nails because they were very, very concerned that the sun had been very quiet for so long, and this was not predictable. And so because it was not predicted, it did not follow the solar cycle, they were afraid that the sun might be doing something erratic. And that's when we began to see in the press and the news all these warnings about what major solar flares would do to the planet, to communications, to power grids, etc. And then in the last few months, we've seen that the sun's been relatively quiet. And now the scientists are saying, well, maybe the sun is going into a long period, years of quiescence. It's going to quiet down, and that's what we're seeing. And that might create global cooling. That may be why there's been the storms, snowstorms have been so severe, because the sun's quieter and not as active. Folks, it's the calm before the storm. It is the calm before the storm. The kill shot effects, and these will come and go, but the massive damage, first of all, will be to communications. Communication satellites, military satellites as well, will go down. We're not talking about single event latch-ups where you have a couple of semiconductors go bad. No, these things will be fried. Anybody in space, whether you're inside that little leaded shield on a space station or not, you're fried. You're in bad shape. You're going to die. Okay. So communication, power grids. Power grids, when they go down, folks, when the sun takes the power grids down, it's done it before. This time they won't go back up. It'll be months and months, if not years, to get power grids back up and running. There's going to be no power. Okay, so you'll need some. If you live in a place where it's going to be cold, you're going to need fuel to stay warm. So there's a lot of planning to do, folks. I would encourage you to start now, if not yesterday. I also want to point out that there's going to be most probably unprecedented geophysical events when this kill shot sequence starts. Earth can only take so much of protons hitting its magnetosphere, and on top of that, you're going to have X-rays that will be at Earth in 10 minutes, right? Now, we don't know how powerful those X-rays will be, but we do know that those protons will be extremely powerful, that mass from the sun. So we're looking at anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, perhaps sometimes longer, depending on the velocity of the flare itself, before that actually impinges upon Earth's atmosphere and begins to heat it up. When the heating occurs, after that's done, that's when the power grids begin to go down. That's the X-rays themselves will take out satellites if they're powerful X-ray flares.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Planet X News. This is Scott from the Nibiru channel. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we've had some significant earthquakes occurring off the coast of Russia. I apologize right now. The earthquake map is reloading. There's also been some significant earthquakes in the California area. Nothing major, but these earthquakes are now starting to occur. This is something that we talked about considerably in all of our live streams yesterday. We've had some activity up here in the corner of Canada and Alaska, magnitude 3.8. There's the newest quake, 58 minutes ago, magnitude 3.1. Significant earthquake over here in Nevada, magnitude 3.6. 3.3 in Oklahoma, as we went over this information before. Now, there is a massive swarm of very, very strong earthquakes occurring right off the coast. There are so many that I'm going to have to zoom out to pick them all up. This just occurred 29 minutes ago, magnitude 4.4, 5.1, 5.2, a 5.3, a 7.6 an hour and a half ago, and a major 7.7, 7.4, 5.2. And if I just pan out just a little bit, you can see, yeah, the 7.4. Let's see, the depth 48 meters, or excuse me, 48 kilometers. Yeah, these are very shallow quakes. This is 7.7. Depth of only 11.7 kilometers. The 5.2. Yeah, these are very, very shallow. Very shallow. Pan back out here just a little bit, but you can see where this earthquake swarm is now starting. Just back out a little bit more so you can get an idea of where this is occurring. Now, this is right off of the tip of the Aleutian Islands that come off of Alaska. And then this is Russia, right here. This is the biggest swarm of earthquakes I've ever seen here. But, ladies and gentlemen, the earthquake activity is now starting. As you can see by looking at the map, it's starting to occur. And I have a feeling that it's going to be an interesting evening, possibly over the next 12 to 24 hours. We're going to be keeping a very, very close eye on all of this. I was planning on live streaming some information tonight. However, some of the live streaming connections with YouTube, that's all down. We're having internet issues all across the United States. There was a huge pulse of energy that came up right over here, and it encompassed all of the northern part of South America and all the way up through here. I don't have the information up on my screen, but all of this here was under this geomagnetic energy, and this will interfere with radio communications, GPS communications. We'll probably have some power outages, things of that nature. And this is all going to occur, from this point on. And we'll try to keep you all updated on it. Internet problems. I mean, listen, you can't do anything about that. I can't live stream at this moment. But as soon as I can, I'll have the live stream up and also the 3D earthquake tracker. Stay tuned, everybody. This is Scott from Planet. Okay, folks, I'm back on with you here. I'm just running some reports for you as we see what's happening around the globe right now. I think we just had two magnitude 6.4s. I'm going to go ahead and check real quick. Let's see what is actually occurring here. We're going to jump on to the USGS real quick here and pull up also a global incident map. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff on here. And let's see what's going on. Well, there's more activity here in the Russia area off the coast. This is a massive swarm. Now it's moved right along the fault line into the Aleutian Islands, which is now becoming part of the United States. Magnitude 5.1. Magnitude 7.7. Now, these earthquakes are all stacked on top of each other. They're now starting to form a very well-defined line, and we can clearly see that. Let's just see what happened down in South America to see if they have that on the map. Yes, they do. Magnitude 6.4 in Peru. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. Okay, this was actually right on the coastline. Wow, that's a pretty big earthquake right there. There seems to be a highway, coastal highway that runs right along there, this roadway. And the depth wasn't deep at all, 44 kilometers. Well, that was the 6.4 that just occurred in Peru. Let's see what's happening on this other global incident map. As you can see, the internet is just running super slow, and I have very, very high speed internet, like business quality, and it's still bad. Another earthquake right here in Cherokee, Oklahoma, 15 minutes ago, magnitude 3.6. Very shallow, depth 5 kilometers. Magnitude 4.1 over here. Another one over here in China, magnitude 4.5. We've seen these deep earthquakes over here in Indonesia, the 4.3 and the 4.8. This cluster of earthquakes here, this is very alarming, folks. I don't know, this just really alarming. Like I said before, you know, this type of earthquake swarm, magnitude 7, 7.5, 7.6, 7.8, whatever they're listed as, they're pretty big. You know, again, this energy can generate itself directly across this portion of the Pacific Ocean, and we're talking about a direct impact that could unsettle Cascadia and the Juan de Fuca fault line, moving all the way down into the San Andreas fault line. I mean, these are powerful earthquakes. They're shallow, so you know the energy, it doesn't have far to travel, folks. You know, we talk about, you know, these deep earthquakes down here in this area. There was several real deep earthquakes the week before. You know, this amount of energy, it goes straight across the ocean. A lot of you that listen to Dutch Sense, he explains it very, very well. It makes complete sense, and that's exactly what happens. They get these deep earthquakes around here, and bingo, the whole west coast of South America gets hit. So that's what we're looking at right now. Big earthquake swarm off the coast of Russia, now moving into the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska. It's going to be an interesting couple of days, folks. You know, there's no doubt about that. You know, I'm waiting for this one video to prepare itself so I could go ahead and live stream it, let you guys listen to it. But it is absolutely taking forever. I'm going to go ahead and put the 3D earthquake tracker back up for you guys to watch, and we're going to take a listen more to Ed Dames. Very, very interesting guy. You know, some people think he's a crackpot. I think he's a professional, highly trained by the United States military, 20 years in secret programs in the U.S. military, in remote viewing. Yeah, okay. I'm going to listen to what he has to say. So we'll take a listen.
Well, a brief background. In the military, I was the operator and training officer, as you know, and some of your listeners know, for the Spy, the U.S.'s psychic spy team, 30 years ago now. And we started experimenting with remote viewing in terms of time and space. We found out that mind is outside of time. You can see over the horizon as well as in the past and the present. And we were especially interested in warfare. What's the intent of the enemy? For instance, right now, I'm doing deep mind probes of Kim Jong-un in Korea to see what his intent are. So these are the kinds of things we were doing to prevent technological and surprises on future battlefields. But we began to see something that was not battle-related. Well, at first we thought it was a nuclear war, but it was not. It was the sun spewing out massive coronal mass ejections, plasma, and affecting the Earth drastically. And by the way, we have not stopped studying this phenomenon or ensemble of information. We've now anecdotally, but importantly, realized that a lot of the damage that I'll talk about tonight that leads to infrastructure collapse on our planet is because the Earth's core is rapidly changing. And we've kept looking up at the sun at these damaging coronal mass ejections, but it turns out that they're damaging to a great part because the Earth's core, the magnetic field of the Earth is weakening and deteriorating. But anyway, and then scientists all of a sudden started jumping on the bandwagon and saying, we're scared. And all of a sudden they had something to be scared about. I predicted a shot across the bow in 2012, and that shot across the bow happened 2 weeks after I said it would, and it turned out to be a flare that was so massive, and we're not talking the Carrington event of the telegraph lines out. We're talking a very, very big one. So we dodged that bullet. If it would have been directed at Earth by that particular active solar region, you can look at the scientific estimates of how many people would have died just infrastructure collapse alone. And infrastructure collapse, for instance, if a power grid goes out, and that's one of the things that a solar flare of this magnitude can cause and will, if that happens, then just one thing, and we'll talk about others tonight, if you're in a metropolitan area and refrigeration doesn't work, you're talking starvation within a week or so of a lot of people, because in these modern days and times, that food has to be preserved and refrigerated. If there's no electricity in cities and the power won't come back up for 6 months to a year or more in many places, when this happens in certain places, then you're talking starvation, not to mention all the other Mad Max scenario types of things. So we feel that this is we're really on the cusp of this thing occurring, and I'll get into more details about that. So that's what we were looking at. And then, of course, how do you survive it, which is what we'll be talking about tonight. But the reason we found it was that we were looking at civilians in the future who were in bunkers. And in most of the places, these were the survivors. The people above ground in some places were rotting corpses. They weren't people anymore. And we began to look at zones that were in the long term, because we don't know how long the scenario will last and the long-term effects. But where were the optimal places to live? And that's what we've been studying for the past many years, 10 particularly. Where are the optimal places to survive long-term on the planet? And we, as you know, we put together a map, which I'll talk about momentarily. And I changed the tone of my voice because we've been hammered by people who want this map, and I've only given it out behind closed doors. But we've changed the way we're going to do things regarding that map. The optimum survival zones on Earth are shockingly few in long term. They're especially in the southern hemisphere. For instance, in Australia, there's only one zone in the entire continent up in the northeast that it represents, based upon our work, a survival zone, or optimal survival zone. And I'll qualify all that this evening. So when I do this as an expert downloader, this is what I'm doing. Your unconscious constantly tries to protect you. It's your best friend, and its key priority your higher mind, is to keep you alive, survival. So that you can go on and achieve some destiny or whatever the heck, but it's to keep you alive. But that little voice, that it's very difficult, as it upwells in the conscious awareness, it's very difficult to get an urgent message into conscious awareness. That's difficult to do. And if you're a remote viewer, it is not, because you can listen to unconscious, and that's what we do. We use it as a tool. I'm going into your unconscious. I'm not violating the sanctity of your mind in any other way, like I do dictators or terrorists. Then I download everything in their deep mind and higher mind in terms of their intent. I'm only looking at how your unconscious perceives an optimum survival zone for you, based upon many, many factors, particularly your personality, your family, lots of other factors, administrative and logistical. I'll answer those questions later. But I go into your unconscious and I look to see where it would say, go thee here for optimum survival and quality of life when the power goes out wherever you are at, in terms of long-term survival. I've had probably 600 clients in the past 7 years, and nominally 80% of them have moved, have relocated already. But that's only 700 people. And many times, especially the elderly in cities and places like that, they cannot pick up and move. They don't have the finances, nor will they, blah, 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 to do that. And their survival zones are right where they're at. So they have to take that into consideration and prepare for those kinds of things. There's a lot of details here, and I do want to inject a sense of urgency. For the first time, I'm going on tour this year, and first and last time. I'm not going to do this again, and I'm going to do a crash course in remote viewing for people who want to find their sanctuaries, and then that's it. Because sanctuary locations are few and far between in the generalized locations. I think that we're so close to, I believe, personally, my personal beliefs based upon my own work, is 2016, there's no sense for Dr. Doom to be out there on the road talking kill shot past 2016, so I'm not going to do it. It's a crash course. I used to give these familiarization courses to VIPs and corporate executives, one-day courses, but this time we're gonna do it and then talk about how to use remote viewing to find your own personal sanctuary, which is different than just the general zones on the remote viewing map that we're going to start providing to people via mail for a while. And in that map, you'll see worldwide, globally, all the optimal survival zones and where you do not want to be, which is in red on most of the map, and that's a lot of places. And it isn't just because of power grids going down and infrastructure collapse. It's not just that. It's also the zones that we're looking at. For instance, a little background, British Columbia. British Columbia met all of the criteria, evidently, for lots of places in British Columbia. They had, with the power was down, no problem. They had a lot of fish, a lot of communities that were, and you can't, a bunker mentality is not going to cut it for you, because you're going to run out of ammo. If you have an abscessed tooth, that will kill you or your loved ones. You need communities of about anywhere from 10 to 20,000 people with a lot of skill sets that can be traded and bartered. And that's key. You're not going to survive in a cabin. A few people can, but most of us can't. People need people. So a lot of these optimum areas are small towns in civilized areas. For instance, Christchurch, New Zealand, it is a sanctuary area. The entire where people are healthy. They grow up in a family atmosphere. There's a lot of farming communities, farmers who take care of each other, and that is key. That is key, one of the key criteria. But why British Columbia didn't, because fresh water, even if the skies are dark or high winds, fish can survive, freshwater fish can survive on algae for 2 years. So you have food, you have plenty of fuel, and those kinds of things. What was wrong with British Columbia? come to find out that a lot of the survival zones that looked good in the long run weren't because of radiation. Looking over in this case, it wasn't looking over the horizon, because as I predicted Fukushima, and Fukushima airborne plumes will impinge upon a great part of the western Rockies, west of the Canadian Rockies, for years and years and years to come, and causing a lot of damage, genetic damage to children. The radionuclides pouring down on them. So that's and in other areas that looked really good to us, Labrador, Newfoundland, it turns out that reactors that will run out of fuel and not be able to cool themselves, and you're going to have hydrogen breaches in 5 days or 7 days. A lot of the airborne plumes from power plants around Lake Huron and the Great Lakes will end up flowing over in that direction, and then you have the same type of problem that you have in British Columbia, sadly, such a beautiful spot. So anyway, our time is limited tonight. Anybody that has questions can go to survivingthekillshot.com, which is the website we set up. You can find out about the map that we'll talk more about, and this tour that I'll be on, this one-day crash course tour, and how to find your own personal sanctuaries so you don't have to hire me to do it. It isn't just the kill shot scenario. As I said, the core of the Earth is changing rapidly, and we're looking at that, at the linkage between the sun and the core of the Earth changing. Earth's magnetic field is weakening, which means that even minor X-class flares are going to do a lot of damage to people. I'm not talking about just increased cancer rates, which are true, but a lot of other damage easily, because the magnetosphere is our protection. The shields are going down or weakening, so that's happening rapidly. And we have only been looking up at the sun and not in at the core of the Earth. A lot of the sounds, the booms, and other noises that people hear in the sky worldwide, they're looking up, but it's actually being produced tectonically by geological effects that have an artifact of sonically in the air. So that's what people are hearing. That's how fast. That's representative of how fast, how rapidly the Earth's core is changing in terms of geological time, and it is changing. But the other thing that I'm worried about is martial law. It's martial law, and that's not going to be put off too much longer. Wait and see. And in fact, as I've said, my gut feeling is there's not going to be another presidential election, and something's out there. I think there's something wrong. I don't want to go into detail, but I've said this. It's been my gut feeling for years that the martial law will preclude elections. That's why I'm kind of discouraged. Yeah. You know, you only hear as much as you want to hear, and people hear me say "kill shot," which is a singular event, and the consensus is Dames is saying that all life on Earth is over because of the kill shot, and that's what they want to hear. But that's not what I've ever said. A series, and we don't know how long the series lasts, of very powerful solar flares, like the one in 2012 that would have taken us down. That one would have taken most of the planet down. You can go back and look, and NASA didn't even want to mention it. It took NASA 2 years to tell us that, by the way, and they did not go public with the information. But you know who did? And you know who acted on it? The U.S. government. NORAD, everybody's moving into Cheyenne Mountain now, they say, because of E2, but it's not because of a nuke EMP. It's because they know that the odds of what happened in 2012 that I said was a shot across the bow, the odds are very high that it's going to happen again soon, and they need to be protected. But anyway, people have a truth. People who are really coherent, their heart and mind, are coherent. They have a truth switch. And I used to be in the deception business, believe it or not, and I was involved in a lot of that stuff before I took over the Spy unit. And we had a sliding scale. And deception's a hard thing to do. It's a difficult thing to do, but we had a sliding scale. And it was like you have to wrap the lie in the truth, right, or the fish don't bite. So it was 20% lie wrapped in 80% truth, in order to try to sell that to somebody to deceive a foreign government or whatever. Well, when I got out of the military and I started to go to Hollywood and places like that, I thought, do I really want to do this? I'd love to be, I'm still I still have my own intelligence agency. I need some credibility here and maintain credibility. Do I really want to go into Hollywood and write books and do these kinds of things? Then I realized that people don't know what remote viewing is. It was all black and classified and top secret. And the way to get this out there is to dramatize it. Sir Ben Kingsley played me in the movie Suspect Zero. I have a cameo in it. Kevin Spacey plays my role in The Men Who Stare at Goats and all these kinds of things. And the drama is there. And it struck me that, hey, I can actually get the idea across, the truth, wrap the truth in the drama, in the lie. And that truth sticks. People have a truth switch. They really say, hey, there could be something to this, and that's how I hook them. That you can learn this just like I did. You can not only find your own sanctuary, but you can find gold or missing kids. I'm out on the road. I say that in 2 days on a cold missing kid case because I'll never stop doing that. It's just a way of giving back for something. What I've been working on is a strategy to end run the scientific community and get a grassroots level support. And the way I'm going to do that, and I haven't told anyone either, is to find missing kids dead and alive again and again and repeatedly using specialized techniques. We call them geofix techniques. It's a trade secret right now that I'm not teaching, and it's very fast and rapid. And to find a kid that the FBI cannot find, well, actually the FBI doesn't care. These kids drop off the radar screen in 2 weeks, and they become a file. That's all. The FBI is the Bureau is too busy with counterterrorism, counter-narcotics, and things like that. I understand, but that. By doing this over and over again, how did you do this? Well, we can get down to within 60 to 100 feet of a target in many cases, and to go and scout out that place, familiarize yourself with it, and if the grid goes down where you happen to be at any given time, get you and your loved ones to that spot, because there's all kinds of as I said, permutations and factors that go into it. For instance, my personal sanctuary location is about 200 miles from my wife's. Because of our personalities involved here, the unconscious is quite aware of only one of the American clients, personal sanctuary clients that I have ever had a sanctuary in Canada. And the reason is simple, because unconscious knows that you'll be kicked out of Canada if you don't have a resident visa, and vice versa. It's just administratively, not to mention logistics. And again, I'm not going to do this again, and I don't want to do it again, but I'm going to give my all. I'm doing that, but I'd rather get it out of the way so I can go back to my own personal. I have some really neat projects. Before I mention that, I just want to mention that the maps and the 2 DVDs that people can order now through mail. For people who attend the workshops, those are free. They're given away. But that map, we have to spend a lot of time in the workshops and at night, because the day is filled with learning the skills and the techniques. But I stay until 10:30 at night, making sure that people don't leave without answers to their specific answers to their questions. One thing I want to say about unconscious is how powerful this tool is. That one other example I want to give you. Let's say that ordinarily, your sanctuary, personal sanctuary location, based upon your unconscious looking at all these factors about you, was in a particular place. But let's say you had a loved one that contracts in the future or does not know about their pancreatic cancer. And unconscious is looking ahead, and it has your best interest, your own best interest at heart, but it knows it can't get this message through to you except sometimes in dreams, but they get all mucked up. The unconscious has access to you, because in the daytime, our conscious awareness, our analytical thinking mind, which is always right? Well, let's say that your location is somewhere in the West, but your loved one it has pancreatic cancer and they don't know about it. And let's say the location that you really would, in terms of your personality, love to go to, has nothing there, nobody there to either diagnose or treat the pancreatic cancer. Well, what good is it to be alive when the people you love are dead? Or what kind of quality of life is that? And your unconscious redirects you to an alternative place, and they're all survival locations. They just, your personal location meets your own criteria. As I mentioned, my wife's location is 200 miles away from mine. Guess where we're really located to? It's going to be hers. But that's the kind of thing that this takes into consideration, and there are many others. The reason I want to get all this out of the way is because I have a couple of capstone projects for my career, and a couple of them involve kids, but the other two that I'm really looking forward to is two missing planes, and one of them is Amelia Earhart's. But I really, the capstone of my career, I want to find Amelia Earhart and her plane. I know where her plane is, and the area where the searchers have been looking is close, but not correct. But the plane we are going to find, and that's the capstone of my career. And by the way, here's something I have not mentioned before that's important. People ask me, what should we be looking for when it's time to run? If you're not already in a sanctuary location, but you know where your sanctuary location is, and you can drive to it. So let's say, for instance, you live in L.A. or Oakland, and the power goes out, and you're stuck in L.A. or Oakland. That's not really a good place to be, and we talk about things like that. But if you know where a sanctuary location is and you have enough gas to get there, then you drive to there, rather than if you want to get out of town, you don't know which way to go. You can't go west, but where do I go? Well, that's what the training, the workshop, and the direction and the guidance gives you. Do this. Find a personal location, scout it out so you know where to go. Make sure your relatives and loved ones know where you're going, because there probably will not be any communications either. They need to know where to go, and you need to make room for them. That kind of thing. The maps are general survival zones. The personal locations are quite specific, and you have to be trained and understand how to find those. It's just the number of people who are going to die, and I mean that's beyond even what Dr. Doom would like to talk about. So that's why I'm reticent. And on any coronal mass ejection, and doesn't necessarily have to be a coronal mass ejection, because there are other phenomena on the sun that can produce the same type of effects. The X-rays that are produced, they're at Earth at the speed of light. So you're talking 8 minutes, and those are the ones that are going to take down a lot of satellites if it's very powerful X-ray flares. Even though modern satellites are hardened, Faraday type of hardened, they're still going to go out. And anybody in space stations is great danger too, even though there's cubby holes they can crawl into. But the high energy mass, the protons from the sun, the mass itself, that can take anywhere from 36 to 48 hours, or sometimes longer. It depends on the escape velocity, whether or not there are back-to-back eruptions, pushing against each other. The physics are complex, but that mass, you have time. That's why I say if you see an next X10 flare, think about going to your sanctuary if you already divined that fast. Because I think that's the beginning of the sequence right there. But the mass itself, if this passing space body, whatever it is, does the same thing that Comet Sliding Spring did to the planet Mars in 2014, there goes our magnetosphere. The shields are down, and even a small X-class flare, or a relatively small X-class flare, is going to do the dams to Earth's power grids. If the magnetosphere it goes down, and it's already deteriorating just upon natural cycles. So that's one of the reasons it's such a sad thing. I don't think 90%, but a lot of people, just a lot of people. And the key again is starvation, not enough fresh water, starvation, water, and again, can't pump gasoline, can't flush a toilet, that it can't use an ATM. You have to realize that that's if the power grid goes down. And the parts of our own country that are most exposed, and parts of North America that are most exposed, are the northern climes and Canada in terms of power grids going down. Many places, in the southern part of the U.S. will never experience a grid. I don't want to say never, but it will be less likely that they'll experience power grids going down. However, they will experience no communication and martial law.
Unlock the power of your mind. This is Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
Welcome and thank you for joining us today. This is an hour dedicated to understanding a little more about ourselves, our beliefs.
Well, a brief background. In the military, I was the operations and training officer, as you know, and some of your listeners know, for the Spy, the U.S.'s psychic spy team, 30 years ago now. And we started the experiment.
make sure that everyone is not panicking and running around like chickens without a head. Now, another interesting sign or trend, if you will, that kind of should have everyone scratching their heads, or the red flag should, is we're seeing a lot of celebrities and wealthy people start getting into prepping. And you're seeing a lot of them buying up even underground spaces, if you will, underground bunkers. We've got these DUMBs, deep underground military bases. I wanted to ask you to maybe talk about that a little bit. I see that's on your website, so you mentioned that, you go into that. But again, it's kind of alarming when you're seeing the wealthy now talking about, hey, I'm a prepper. I'm preparing to move underground if necessary. I know here in the United States, I think most of these underground shelters, if you will, or however you want to label it, are more out west. But maybe you could talk a little bit more about this area and what you're seeing since the last time we talked.
Right. They don't put them near the East Coast or near California. As you say, most are in Colorado out west. And, let's say in Hollywood, James Cameron, who directed the Titanic and
Welcome, Eagles, to another episode of Trad Cat Night Radio. I am Eric Kajewski, founder and owner of Trad Cat Night, the most viewed and followed traditional Catholic website worldwide, ranked number 1 in the world by Alexa. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting back to the topic of Planet X. So on the heels of bringing on Marshall Masters, Gil Broussard, Steve Olson, and John Moore, to just name a few today, I have a very special guest, Dave Mead. And we are going to just go through Planet X, the chastisements coming, and kind of just, get people more aware of this topic that I know David's going to get into. I'm sure in terms on his end, many more are not labeling us conspiracy theorists anymore. They're not labeling us nut jobs. They're actually looking into it and investigating it for themselves, whether it's scientifically, whether it's through prophecy, whether it's through scripture. Now, a little bit about David. He studied astronomy, amongst other subjects, at the University of Louisville. After graduation, he worked in forensic investigations for a number of years. The last 10 years, he has spent with Fortune 1000 companies writing special reports for management. He's a specialist in research and investigation. He has 10 books to his credit. He enjoys relating science and the Bible together. He also believes in Planet X being a perfect marriage of the two. Now, he has talks on YouTube. You can find his talks on Planet X, The Arrival 2017. You can also find his book on Amazon, which I'll put a direct link in the description box below this video. You can get it via Kindle, via paperback, Planet X 2017, The Arrival. So looking forward to hearing what David has to say specifically. But why don't you get us started off here, David, and let us know, the origins of you even looking into the possibility of a Planet X, and what were some of your findings?
Thank you very much. So I do have a personal background in investigative research. In fact, I used to work in the section of the Pentagon that was hit by that missile or that airplane. And I was aware back in 2001 that I was familiar with the Pentagon's budget, and I knew they were 2.3 billion, or trillion in deficit. And believe it or not, since then, the deficit, this is the unexplained deficit, the mystery deficit, you might call it, is 6.5 trillion. So obviously that money had to go to black ops. It cannot be found. And the question is, in your mind, my mind, everyone's mind, what kind of black ops requires $6.5 trillion in the last 20 years? Yeah. And the only thing I can think are the deep underground bases. That's the only thing. I mean, I've got a friend who has been in some of the underground military bases in Colorado. They've got more than the rest of the country combined. They've got, arrays of hundreds of Cray supercomputers, quantum computers. This place, it's going to be the headquarters of whatever happens next, Colorado. And you've got a variety of these stacked across the country. Of course, many, many years ago, back in, I think, the 50s, early 60s, Greenbrier was opened in West Virginia, and that was classified for about 30 years. And then some news reports came out about it. It was not classified, but you've been able to do tours for a period of years. I don't know if you can do them as of this week, but it would hold all of Congress. It would hold 1,000 people. So the technology to do this has been around 50 plus years. In fact, back in the 90s, they had a laser machine that could do about 12 to 14 miles a day of underground tunnels and bases. So it's a very easy technology in some respects. And I suspect a lot of that money went there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I've talked with Bob Fletcher. I'm sure you've probably seen his work, or maybe you even know him. But he said the same thing. His investigative research led him to know as a fact that this is where the money was being, spindled into, if you will. Interesting point, too, with the whole, Denver situation. John Moore also says that Atlanta, once the United States is split, we all probably are aware of that United States Navy map, which I'm sure you have in your book, Planet X 2017, The Arrival. He talks about Atlanta being another command post, if you will, outside of Colorado out there in the west. So definitely some, an interesting subject. People need to look and investigate into this. Talk to us a little bit before we really go any further about where we're at with Planet X. There's a lot of people right now coming onto my website and saying, "Hey, listen, we would be seeing this thing by now," but that's not necessarily the case, is it, David? I mean, we see pictures online and maybe some YouTube channels, the two suns, this or that. But where is this thing? Is it hidden behind the sun? It's probably going to hit us pretty abruptly. Lay out a scenario for us that you're seeing.
Right. It's either a red dwarf star or a brown dwarf star. The difference being a brown dwarf star never ignited. In either case, it's covered by red iron oxide dust. It's hidden. It's only in the infrared spectrum. It would have to actually approach us and probably block the sun. When it does, it'll be the size of the moon. It will do an eclipse of the sun, and it will create a time of darkness. But when that time happens, in any case, there have been some anomalies. In fact, there was a case in Sanibel Island at the Causeway in Florida where a lady did a video of Planet X. Now, that's very rare for this hemisphere. And then I'm familiar with another one, and these have been analyzed. And then there was another one, 20,000, 30,000 feet up, a flight in South America over Peru, or one of those countries. And a fellow had a very expensive camera, and he was able to capture a very good video, which again was subject to photographic analysis. So there are anomalies, there are exceptions, but as a general rule, you need a 20-inch telescope. You need to be in the southern hemisphere. You need to be in New Zealand, or you need to be at the South Pole, or you need to be at the top of a 15,000-foot observatory with proper equipment to really track this particular object.
Yeah, speaking of observatories, we talk about this often. There's numerous observatories across the board. There's one in Italy. There's one called Project Wormwood out in Australia. I believe it's run by the government. Then we got the Lucifer telescope, of which the Vatican has at least somewhat a hand in. They're definitely paying attention to the skies. And Father Malachi Martin, who read The Real Third Secret, because there's an aspect of The Real Third Secret of Fatima that entails the passing of Planet X and just millions and billions of people dying quite quickly. Is there any latest developments in terms of paying attention to the skies with world governments that you're aware of?
In terms of world governments, well, I'm positive that all the major world governments are totally aware of it. Europe, Britain, the United States, Russia, and China. Russia seems to be somewhat more open. I've actually seen Russian news channel scenarios on Planet X, and they don't seem to have the cloak of secrecy that we do here in the North America. Very strange. It's a dictatorship. They're communists, but they seem to be somewhat open about this topic. So it's very confusing. But people often say, what is your basis for knowing that Planet X exists? It's inbound, and it's going to have major impact destruction, damage estimates as a result of it. And the answers are, number one, historical records, the Nebra sky disk, and other things, which I'm sure you've reviewed.
Sure.
Number two, modern observations, like these photographs, these videos, these insider reports that do appear from people like Father Malachi Martin and the fellow named codename Arizona, who has a YouTube 15-minute interview. He was a Hubble insider. So you've got human intelligence, you've got historical records, and then you've got, the book of the Apocalypse, the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which doesn't come from a much higher source. And I think Revelation chapter 6 and Revelation chapter 12, Revelation 6 is the opening of the sixth seal, and Revelation chapter 12 is the imagery of the woman in Virgo. Those two items, and it talks about the red dragon in Revelation chapter 12. That is obviously and apparently, without any doubt, in my opinion, the red dragon in Revelation 12, Wormwood in chapter 6, they're both the same thing. They're the Planet X Nibiru system.
Now, backing up for a second in terms of whole prepping, we know, you and I both know that the world governments are preparing for it, the Vatican are preparing for it. I would say more and more people are starting to take this more seriously, and they're slowly prepping. But talk to us a little bit about the Doomsday Seed Vault and the importance in the days ahead of having maybe some heirloom seeds on hand.
Right. I recommend I would say a 3-month supply at least of survival equipment and goods and food and water. the Doomsday Seed Vault is the world's response to this. Let me talk on that for a few minutes, because a lot of people don't know the details on it, and it gives you a good example of how the world is prepared. So there's the remote archipelago called Svalbard at the top of the planet over the Arctic, and in it there's a Doomsday Seed Vault. It can handle 2.5 billion seeds. In other words, 500 seeds from each of the 4.5 million varieties of crops. It now houses well over a couple of million seeds. It's located at the end of the Earth, due north of Europe. It's administered by Norway. And it's the world's insurance policy for securing survival. It's been described as a frozen Garden of Eden. It looks like a concrete wedge built into the side of a mountain. And it has withstood up to a 6.2 magnitude earthquake. It's only 620 miles from the North Pole, $9 million to construct it. And the seed vault functions like having a personal safety deposit box in a bank. The bank owns the building, the depositor owns the contents of his or her box. Countries can basically deposit seeds at no charge and withdraw them as needed. It was supposedly funded by the Global Crop Diversity Trust, a UN spinoff based out of Rome. And they chilled the vault down to minus 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit. So the seeds can live for 1,000 years. They're packed in silvery foil packages. And basically the vault's purpose is to make it feasible to reestablish crops should they somehow disappear from our natural environment. So, of course, I wonder how that would happen. So when the economy collapses, when you have a collapse of the infrastructure of communications due to the approach of Planet X Nibiru system, this is basically the world's signal that we know what's about to happen, and we have prepared, at least for our group of people.
Yeah, and that's very interesting too. I know you and I both talk about this. As Planet X gets closer, it's going to goof around with the sun. To put it in layman's terms, not only will we, more than likely, our whole electrical grid will go down. I know you're talking about the whole CME solar kill shot scenario. I've been trying to get Major Ed Dames on to kind of relay his thesis on that. But this ties in with Revelation 8:7, a third of the earth being burned. Why don't you talk about that for a few?
Sure. Major Ed Dames was part of this is probably what he would say if he was on. He was part of a CIA-Pentagon jointly sponsored project involving remote viewing. And he stated this project saw the, quote, end of days as being tied to a series of major solar flares over about a 1-year period. Earth was totally unprepared. Well, it is totally unprepared. Our magnetosphere, according to Project Themis and so forth, has 4 major holes, areas in it, and so forth. But anyway, in a recent interview, James was asked whether Planet X or Nibiru may have been the cause of the solar activity and flares that devastate the Earth. It's right after the 7-minute point. He implied it was very probable. Now, one of his callers on the program, this is kind of off the wall, but interesting, made a very interesting observation. The viewer, about 11 minutes, 50 seconds into the segment, raised a fascinating point. He states he's with the military. He ran across a document a few months ago, partly classified, partly unclassified, of a very large object moving through space towards the Earth. But the weird thing about it, and I'm quoting him, the weird thing about it is that it's changing speed, it's changing vectors, every aspect on a daily basis, and they can't get a handle on it. So, well, the military knows about it. Serious researchers know about it. The question is it under some sort of intelligent control? The world is drifting along. So I can't, of course, answer that question. But getting back to what's going to happen, what's going to happen to the 440 nuclear power reactors? Yeah. They require electricity to operate the cooling systems. So they've got huge levels of radioactive fuel, and you've got an apocalyptic scenario of a small portion, significant portion right there that's probable, or if not guaranteed, because if the reactor cores are not continuously cooled, you'll get a reactor core meltdown, fires in storage ponds for the spent fuel rods. So with a widespread grid collapse, the backup generators will last no more than a week, and then the reactor cores melt down. The water bath over the spent fuel rods will boil away. The stored fuel rods will melt down and burn. So, that's going to be a nuclear meltdown of 440 nuclear power reactors in North America.
Yeah, it's something we often don't think about. We obviously, have been tooting the horn, people getting off coastlines, getting out of major cities before the economic collapse. Global martial law is put into play. I'm not sure what your thesis is, but I would say, as a consensus opinion, most of us agree that before we even see this star sign, Planet X first in the sky, that martial law will be in place maybe a few months, 3-4 months beforehand. You could give us your take. Feel free to disagree on that. But yeah, we're also, I also have to take into consideration the volcanoes. What about Yellowstone and the other super volcano that's over there in California, I think?
Right, volcanoes are a very, very good question. The situation there is that Yellowstone is dangerous, but there is an even more dangerous volcano, and I believe it's called the Long Valley Caldera, not too far east of San Francisco. And for your viewers, a caldera is a cauldron-like volcanic feature on large central volcanoes. It can be several kilometers in diameter, and the depression originated in some prior very large explosive eruption. So this is located in Mono County, don't know how to pronounce that, California. And I've got the latitude and longitude here, 37.7 north and 118.87 west. 2,600 feet in elevation, and nearby town is Mammoth Lake, California. The threat potential is very high. I would say when Planet X approaches, this is already about to erupt, and I think this could take out most of California from San Francisco south. I would recommend a site called, just for if you want to update yourself on volcanoes, it's called the Volcano Discovery Site. It maps all the current active volcanoes. Now, back in 1999-2000, this just shows you the algorithm here. Back in the year 2000, there were 2 to 3 active volcanoes. Now, let me just list, as of 2 days ago, I happened to be on the site, there's one erupting in Europe, in the Aeolian Islands of Italy, 3 in Africa, 6 in Indonesia, 7 in Mexico, 6 in South America, 1 in Antarctica, 1 in Hawaii, 2 in the Pacific, 1 in Vanuatu, 4 in the Ring of Fire, which is the Kuril Islands to the Philippines. So that's 32 active, and another 36 are listed with a warning about to erupt. And that totals 68 active or about to erupt today.
Wow. Yeah, and that's one of the things I know you're covering, I'm covering, because we always get the naysayers. Well, there's no objective data to actually prove it, and yet there is. I mean, we see the increase not only in these sinkholes, but obviously the volcanoes, but then also earthquakes. It was just about a week or two ago. I track this on a daily basis, go to USGS, and normally they're around 30, in between 30 and 40. And I think it was on the day of the Italian earthquake, there was something like 75 to 80. And they're just increasing. And that's typical and ties in with Scripture with the whole birth pangs that the earthquakes would increase in intensity, and then the duration between the contractions, if you will get smaller and smaller as we head towards the more climactic events, if you will. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about what you're seeing in terms of the sinkholes and earthquakes.
Sure. Like you say, on an average basis, you're looking at 70 to 90 earthquakes per day, and this is somewhat unheard of if you look at the scale back 20 years ago. One of the major dangers, of course, of these of the approach of X is the effects of Y-class solar flares, because this basically an EMP, as you know, an electromagnetic pulse, is generated 2 ways: from the detonation of a nuclear device or by extreme solar activity. If you look back in 1859, a great solar storm hit the planet, and this storm was the product of a coronal mass ejection from the sun. It was called the Carrington event, just to give you a comparison. And this storm short-circuited telegraph wires and caused massive fires. The typical light show you can watch in the north, known as the Aurora Borealis, was seen as far south as Cuba, the Bahamas, and even Hawaii. Spark discharges set telegraph paper on fire. Now, the electrical grid at that time was almost non-existent, mostly just a few telegraph wires in larger cities. But this event did have major impact on the society of that day. So what's going to happen when X arrives is that's going to create an event that occurs on the surface of the sun that releases a tremendous amount of energy in the form of a solar flare, coronal mass ejection. And this is something that would have the mass that exceeds Mount Everest. And this time, of course, events will be different. This will bring down the electrical grid. Congress has had many chances to harden the electrical grid, but we just simply will not front-end the funding. And so you'll have shelves on the grocery stores cleaned out inside of a couple of days. banks and ATMs not working, gas pumps not functioning, food transportation coming to a stop, and you'll have rioting and looting of all types. Communication satellites will be down. In fact, they'll be one of the first signs of the EMP blast, because X-rays travel at the speed of light, and those will hit in 8 minutes. So when you see some of the GPS satellites and so forth going down, you've got 2 or 3 days until the CME hits the electrical grid. So this will be the calling card of Planet X as it approaches the Earth.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Hopefully everyone takes that to heart and takes it seriously. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about quote-unquote climate change. I just posted SOT.net, and they do a good job of getting a lot of these birth pang events out to you visually. SOT.net, strangesounds.org, and then also the Hawkeye Davis channel is another good resource. But, many people equate that with communism, and they kind of just disregard it. They don't want to believe we're in a pole shift. They don't want to actually believe that these changes that are happening are not normal, if you will, to put it in layman's terms. They just think it's a natural process. Hey, don't worry about Planet X. The Earth just kind of goes through this. What are you saying to these types of individuals who, are the naysayers, I guess?
Well, I would basically say, it's been proven that we have holes in the Earth's magnetosphere. We have Y-class solar flare threats. And you basically have got to be prepared. There's an old Russian saying that says, cheer up, comrades, things will get worse. Well, that's where we are right now. The evidence of Planet X is such a high level. It's been known to the ancient Sumerians, the ancient Egyptians. It's been written about in manuscripts. And the Bible is referring to this system as wormwood and the red dragon. And it has been discovered, tracked, and probed by scientists for the government. Some scientists who got too close to the truth, such as Harrington, were eliminated. And of course, on the internet, you have paid disinformants and trolls who try to debunk the topic on the internet. As you mentioned, the Vatican tracks the Planet X system through Lucifer, a near-infrared camera spectrograph system, which was added to the Large Binocular Telescope on Mount Graham in southeastern Arizona. And those cameras are super cooled, I think, minus 351 Fahrenheit. So people don't spend tens of millions of dollars like this for no reason at all. The normal temperatures, I believe, on Mount Graham, the priests and so forth that are the astronomers can switch between 3 different cameras that use 18 filters, depending on the required resolution. They can do simultaneous spectroscopy of about 24 objects per session. Of course, the Vatican has its own, intelligence agency, and I'm sure this is compartmentalized, this type of work. Their work on the universe in general, their work on seeking and finding extraterrestrial life or radio signals, that's probably on the public domain. But this type of work is obviously probably not. So, Congress hasn't done anything in preparation. They aren't permitted to. In fact, this may be the catalyst for the implementation of the New World Order system. I think everything is culminating to a point in time. Timing is everything. And it's very interesting. It's been 100 years since, or it will be 100 years next fall, in the fall of 2017, since the Fatima situation.
Yeah.
And that my book actually concentrates. And I found a lot of signals that concentrate human intelligence, signal intelligence, Bible intelligence, that concentrate a lot of what's going to happen to the fall of 2017. I believe it's going to be a very momentous year, just a little over 12 months.
Absolutely. And you also make mention of the astrological sign, September 23rd, 2017. Maybe you could talk about that, because, again, from our traditional Catholic perspective, that kind of is alerting to this triumph of the Immaculate Heart period. But yeah, 2017 is going to be very volatile in my opinion. A lot of things I think are going to happen, but maybe you could mention that. I know it's in your book.
Sure. Revelation 12. I'll just read 1 or 2 verses. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then listen to this, verse 3. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads. Well, that's the 7 planets that combine the system, and so forth. And I won't read the rest of it. But basically, here's what it is. If you look, if you look at astronomical software such as Stellarium, and there's other out there that's good too. But if you look back 6,000 years and forward 1,000, and you attempt to find that particular sign in the heavens, in the stars, here's what happens. You need to have a variety of convergent circumstances. You've got to have Jupiter, the king planet, or the planet of the Messiah, in retrograde. You have to have Jupiter in the womb of Virgo. You have to have it there about 300 days, the approximate term of pregnancy. You have to have the woman clothed in the sun, Virgo clothed in the sun. You have to have a crown of 12 stars. You have to have the moon at her feet. You have to have proper alignment in the crown. And so, what happens is that in this 7,000-year frame of time, there's only one period of time that meets all those requirements, and that just happens to be September 23rd, 2017.
Yeah, that's very interesting, too. I'm not sure if you've looked into this. Obviously, when everyone sees this, because everyone's going to see this, however you want to label it, planet X, star sign, yada, 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 the New Age, from the New Age's writings, which ties in with the New World Order, many listeners who have been following Tradcat Night, I have someone pinned who I believe, without any shadow of a doubt, is the Antichrist. His name is Maitreya, and he ties in with this star sign. So these New Agers are awaiting this star sign too, and it's interesting to note, they say it will be first seen in the skies in the last week of December in mockery of our Lord. Remember the three magi following the star to go, basically to usher in the Messiah. Well, after all these calamities start, people are going to be expecting, certain people, not us obviously, but this new Messiah to come in and kind of help us out. And so that's what's kind of interesting, is that would happen after September, following your thesis, which is kind of interesting. Moving along, there's so many topics, David, to get into, but one of the questions that's been coming in, we've got a lot of followers down that new Madrid area. Could you talk a little bit more about that and some of the potential scenarios? I know there's a lot of nuclear reactors along the river there, but then according to John Moore's map, it basically just opens up and it's a huge body of water. What are we talking there? Just massive earthquakes that just rupture it open?
Right. I would say, but I'm looking at the U.S. Navy map of future America, which John Moore has referenced. And of course, it shows both coast and the new Madrid area flooded at least 100 miles inland with water. So just to summarize for viewers that may not be totally familiar with what's going to happen during a pole shift. Now, the pole doesn't have to shift 90 degrees. It could shift 12 or 20 degrees and have these terrible effects. Now, we're talking a physical pole shift with Planet X. As we know, though, the magnetic poles have been shifting towards Russia at over 40 miles per year. But when Planet X arrives, the physical poles will shift. And this will create a variety of tsunamis, hyper-earthquakes, and the shifting of land masses. Just to give you a couple of states, for example, two of the most dangerous states to be in are Florida and California. Of course, you'll have warning. And we all know why California is dangerous. It's composed of rock plates, and when it's compressed, it breaks, and the West Coast will have major catastrophic changes. They'll have tidal waves, they'll have high hurricane-force winds, earthquakes on the fault lines, volcanic activity, and forest fires caused by volcanic explosions, severe lightning storms. It's a highly dangerous state. And I would not try to ride out the shifts anywhere near those plates in California. They'll have very high-level quakes. They'll have broken gas and water lines, basically chaos around the San Andreas and related fault lines. A lot of the population could be trapped. Florida, on the other hand, has the highest elevation of 105 meters in the Florida Panhandle, and that part of the state can probably survive. But as for Central and South Florida and the Keys, these parts could be devastated by a tide of water. You have safe states. You have most of Colorado, a good part of Arizona, of course the Ozarks, northern Arkansas and southern Missouri. They have an average elevation close to 1,000 feet, self-sufficient water supply, a lot of agricultural land, and they're isolated from large metropolitan areas. I wouldn't want to be in downtown Chicago when all this happens. So you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't want to be in any major city. But, yeah, looking at it from, a spiritual context, I guess, I always say, pan back, look at the United States and see where the most sinful areas are. Take a look at the most liberal areas along the coastline, Seattle, that Portland area. Then you have, of course, San Francisco, Los Angeles, going on the East Coast, Boston, Washington, D.C., the tri-state area. It's not safe places, folks. I wanted to add this, too. I did a blog recently David. It was about 2 weeks ago, wherein there was an esteemed Catholic mystic. I'm not sure if you heard of her, Marie Julie Jeheni. She actually held the stigmata the longest in church history, longer than Padre Pio. And she warned us. It was actually our Lord talking to Marie Julie Jeheni, warning us of this radiant planet which was going to come to basically punish the elite. Let's just label them the elite. We could get a little bit more specific than that. So, on top of Scripture and a lot of these other prophecies, outside of the Catholic Church, there was this main prophecy from one of the holiest women that ever lived, and our Lord called it the radiant planet, which is kind of interesting. Now, this ties into my question. If everyone knows it's coming in terms of the world governments and the Vatican, why aren't they saying, anything about it? And then maybe we'll get into a little bit of the disinformation being put out there.
Well, that's a very good question. That's, say, a $64,000 question. But I think the answer is, my stepfather, I'll give you a little history. He worked at Bethesda Naval Hospital in Maryland, and he was there the night they brought in John F. Kennedy's body. And he took the autopsy photos in the autopsy room. Dr. Yoon did the autopsy, but my stepfather did the photos, which were later released to the CIA and to the House Assassinations Committee and so forth. And he was taken into a room about 2 days after the autopsy scenario. And he said there were a lot of admirals and generals there. And they said, now listen, you guys, you got two choices. You can work here 20 years and retire on your pensions and move to Hawaii, or if you say anything about what you've seen here tonight, we will court-martial you, strip you of your rank, strip you of your pay, and probably put you in Leavenworth. So basically, some of these people are in compromised positions. They can't say much. And also, they've compartmentalized it so much, I don't think most of NASA is even aware of it. I think they have a NIBRU search team, maybe a dozen people that handles it, but I think it's above top secret. And basically, in any case, NASA, even if you were with NASA and you knew most of the details, you're under strict non-disclosure agreements there, confidentiality agreements, and NASA is under contract to the NSA, no such agency, the National Security Agency. So they're under contract to them, and there's basically a gag order on anything that might cause, quote, panic or disrupt the global economy.
Now, have you had, personally speaking, off air, any government officials, military men outside of some of the ones we've already mentioned, like John Moore, come to you basically confirming this? Because I know I personally had gotten emails, spoken to a few people, high-ranking military men who've now moved actually out to the Midwest saying, yeah, the military does know about this.
Oh, sure. One of them sent me, I can't mention any names or dates, but I actually received I guess you would call it a hidden movie of a video of Planet X, and you could actually see it moving in the solar system. I think it was between Mars and Jupiter at that point. And, this was taken from a publicly funded government telescope at a very high altitude and high level observatory. And this person was able to get a part of that movie out through his Apple iPhone, or I'm not sure how he did it, but I looked at it for about 2 minutes. He sent it to me. He sent me some still photos, and he sent me a movie. And so I've been contacted. I get all kinds of emails, and I have been contacted by a couple of people that are in this category. Absolutely.
Wow, lots of signs. We're seeing it all around us. We had, I think it was in the past few weeks or a month, we had a couple more comets dive bomb into the sun. Not sure if you saw that, causing some more CMEs. There's another website out there. I've had Ben Davidson on from Suspicious Observers, and he tracks all of the latest CMEs and solar flares, and a lot of the stuff that David and I are talking about. He has said from a scientific standpoint are not out of the realm of possibility. Talk a little bit about the kind of marriage and merger between science and religion. Are you finding a lot of people who kind of wanted to debunk the Bible or prophecy are now coming to the realization that there is that marriage there between science and religion, or scripture, however you want to say it?
Sure. I believe the fact that the book of Revelation is so specific in chapters 6 and 12 particularly, and I think most of what are called the trumpet judgments in the book of Revelation are basically the impact damage of of this object. And so I think if you bring that to people's attention, people that have read my book, I get a half a dozen emails a day, and people saying this brought a whole. I never realized, they said, that this brought the Book of Revelation to life for me, and this shows me what the quote Great Tribulation seems to be all about. Most of this impact damage seems to be Planet X. And just to talk about that for a second, the impact damage. A lot of people are saying, well, won't the government handle this? Won't the government do this? Won't the government do that? So let me just talk for a minute or two as we wind down on that. Now, I don't know, but most of your viewers may be aware NASA has a vision to return to the moon and to Mars, but it does not have a mandate, nor does it have a budget, to develop a planetary defense system. No mandate, no place in the budget. There's no mandate for space development and no money. And so this is basically not something where you can trust the government for a mitigation strategy. Deterrence would probably take technology that we won't have for 50 years. The mission is well beyond the capability of what you call conventionally chemically powered spacecraft. You would have to have a nuclear powered spacecraft. You would have to have years of warning. You would have to have a propulsion package such as they use on the advanced, well beyond the Prometheus project or the Jupiter Icy Moons Orbiter spacecraft. The technology is not currently available, and I think this is the reason for the lack of detection funding, and which basically cripples NASA and leaves the U.S. wide open in terms of planetary defense.
Now, from your perspective, we try to cover it all angles here at Tradcat Night. As it relates to geoengineering and CERN, I'm not sure how much you've dived into these topics, because you'll get people from the geoengineering community who basically say all of these, Earth changes and things along that line are due to man controlling nature. And I would argue to a certain degree, but not to the level certainly that we're seeing. I don't believe we would see just all of this objective quantitative data that is just so profound coming from man, and then also CERN, and I'll kind of follow up with a point there. But what do you say to individuals who just say, well, no, it's not Planet X, it's just man goofing with nature?
Well, as you say, there's so much objective and circumstantial evidence on a prima facie basis, as they say in these courts, that you've got the probability of a kill shot scenario. You've got volcanic activity, you've got earthquake activity that basically I don't believe can be controlled by a single instrument. I don't think CERN was designed primarily for that purpose. I'm not sure. It may have ulterior purposes. It may well have one or two ulterior purposes. I don't know what they are. But there just doesn't seem to be, and I know people who are familiar with the Defense Advanced Research Project Initiative in the Pentagon, and I know people who have spent time at military research facilities, and we do have some weather modification possibilities such as HARP, but that can, at the most, that can create possibly some storms. I don't see anything that can create these earthquakes, that can create this volcanic activity, that can create this level of impact damage that you read about that's going to occur under Planet X. I don't think that's a man-made event.
I was listening to one talk. It was one of the first talks I ever listened to. He was an ex-CIA guy. It was out on YouTube, a viral video, and he was talking about how as Planet X passes, it's essentially going to lock onto us like a magnet. And immediately I was, with my prophecy background with as it relates to Catholicism, I immediately jumped to the 3 days of darkness, wherein, the Blessed Virgin Mary and Our Lady were warning us that during the 3 days of darkness, that the whole earth was basically just going to convulse. I mean, we were just going to be rattled to the core for virtually 3 days. And I know you've been on record as saying that, as it gets closer and closer, eventually that same scenario would hold, and that we would have like 10, earthquakes over a 10 Richter scale. I mean, can we even fathom what's about to happen?
No, it's hard to conceive because we haven't experienced it. I believe it's been experienced about 3,600 to 4,000 years ago. But each experience, each cycle of its passing of this binary twin is going to be different. Now, basically, you've got a blue daytime sky, and that's going to shield this red dragon, this Planet X system, until when later in 2017, the exact date and so forth, until it eclipses the sun. There will be a full disk solar eclipse, which it creates by its appearance. And at that point, the sky will turn black. It will reveal the constellations and the red dragon. And but right now, today, this week, month, and year, the red dragon is out there, but it's hidden by blue sky. It's in the infrared spectrum, and you're not going to see it unless you just happen to be in the right place at the right time with a very good camera, or unless you're privy to one of these high-level telescopes.
I believe it was just recently they were talking about a total solar eclipse somewhere late in August. Recently, I can't recall where I read it. I can't remember if it was space.com or one of those sites, but I know there is on record there being a total solar eclipse either in the late summer or early fall. So definitely setting up that situation there. Let's get into a little bit on the prepping side of things. Give some practical advice for those who want to prep. Again, I don't advocate running around like a chicken without a head. You want to be prudent. I advise people to start slowly liquidating their accounts, because in order to get fitted into this new world order socialist system, it's not going to matter, how much is in your pension or how much you have in your savings. I mean, just start moving it into tangible assets. But buy land, start growing gardens. I mean, just get off the grid, basically. I mean, what are you advocating, and provide some practical advice?
Well, there's a lot of, I know one government scientist who did something that was probably rather extreme, but he built a geodesic dome home in the middle of the Arizona desert. And those homes can withstand 200-mile-an-hour winds and can withstand, you're not going to find a tidal wave there, but they can withstand just about everything. There was a recent earthquake in Southern California, and there happened to be a geodesic home among 700 other homes, and all 700 homes were destroyed except that one from the earthquake. So, there is very secure housing that's available, but that can be on the expensive side and might require relocation. In terms of what's more practical, you just, these survival magazines talk about bug-out bags. There's a good magazine called Survival Equipment or something like that. Get it at your local grocery store, and it has 40 or 50 different sources of survival equipment websites you can go to, and you can shop around. And there are, a lot of these preset meals, 21 days, 3 months. And I'd say adequate food and water is important, and being very mobile and ready to react on a moment's notice, especially if you happen to live near a coast. I think those are important issues.
Yeah, as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking. I have a video out there called "The Sign of the Son of Man," and again, it kind of relays a lot of this information as we first see Planet X. Again, based upon your bias, the New Agers are going to say one thing, Christians will be saying another thing. It's going to be quite an interesting time. But from Scripture, we also learned that the elite eventually go and hide out in their dens, and that ties in earlier with what David was talking about with these underground bunkers. So I think even people who are not coming from a prophetic standpoint see that connection, David.
Right. Well, in the book of Revelation, the Apostle John, of course, wrote the book of Revelation around 90-95 AD, and he was on a remote island called Patmos when it was all revealed to him. And very strangely, he wrote in the book of Revelation that the elite of the earth, I didn't call them the elite, but he called the rich men or the kings, I think. The kings of the earth. He said that they will flee to the rocks and caves and say to the rocks. And in other words, how would he know that? How does he know about deep underground bases 2,000 years ago?
That's so striking. I mean, and that's what I'm saying, that people in the science communities who are not, bought into religion or scripture, I mean, even they scratch their heads and they're like, oh my goodness, I see the connection there. So, David, wow, what a talk here. Is there anything that we missed today that you would like to get across? Anything that we didn't cover before I give you the final few minutes to talk about your 2017 Arrival book a little bit more, maybe some of the work that you're doing as a guest writer at Planet X? I want to give you the last few minutes here to just get into whatever you'd like to get into.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think the important thing is critical and strategic thinking. I think you almost have to think like an intelligence officer to understand how the government operates. they operate in terms of covers and legends when they don't want to disclose their real purpose. For example, in terms of the South Pole Telescope, they say, and this is, I'm quoting them, "We need to study cosmic rays in an undiluted atmosphere in order to understand the age of the Earth," unquote. Well, that kind of sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? And that's one of their supposed reasons for the South Pole Telescope. I wrote an article for Planet X about a murder at the South Pole in 2001. Dr. Marks, he was poisoned, methane poisoning, and it took, I think, 6 or 8 months for his body to get back to Australia or New Zealand. And there were all kinds of problems there. And who would poison him? Why would he be poisoned? He wouldn't drink methane on purpose. And why didn't they have, there's just so many whys and unanswered questions there. I just think I think from these insiders that get too close, that have the credentials, I think it's very, very dangerous for these people. And perhaps he was saying too much, perhaps he knew too much. In any case, NASA's known about this since the 1980s, and they spent billions of dollars to construct a telescope at the South Pole in, I think, 2007. I think it was operational around the spring of 2007. And the South Pole Telescope, of course, is far more powerful and survivable than the former IRIS spacecraft and the Hubble telescope put together. So this manned observatory can track Planet X Nibiru from the skies of Antarctica. In other words, why would a telescope requiring such huge expenditures of logistics and funds be built in a desolate location? Why not put it on a mountain in Chile? So there's peculiarities. The other peculiarities are all the money that's missing from the Pentagon's budget. And there are reports of a deep underground base below Denver International Airport. And I think it's highly likely that all this missing money was used to construct this. The CIA moved its domestic division out there about 10 years ago. Why did they do that? Why did they stay there in McLean, Virginia? So these underground sanctuaries are stocked with food and water, gold and silver bars, wrapped currency, medicines, and so forth. Why? If Planet X didn't exist, there would be no need to build them. So I hope at this point it's obvious. They've known about this object for decades, and then you go back just a few years ago, say 2011, you had the deaths of electromagnetically sensitive animals, birds, and fish that escalated worldwide. There were erratic fluctuations in compasses. Airport runways had to be remarked, and so forth. I think in January of 2011, January 11th, the increased infusion of Nibiru's reverse polarity probably caused Earth's rotational axis to shift slightly, and the sun rose actually 2 days early in Greenland. So some amazing things are happening, and it's just a matter of people, getting educated and doing some preparation.
Yeah, and to add to that, I had on internationally renowned, acclaimed journalist out there in Europe, Nick Rossin, on, who's also advocating getting off the grid, who actually went to a few billionaires' homes underground. So he was well aware and saw these things with his own eyes. And I was trying to draw the connection to Planet X, and he said that it made perfect sense to him. But yeah, any way you cut this, I think most people now are trying their hardest to debunk us, but they're kind of running out of ammo, so to speak. And sooner or later, we hope that people do wake up before all, the worst of the worst, I guess, transpires. And again, 2017, 100-year anniversary of Fatima. Pay attention to the sun. Our Lady warned in 1917 via the sun, so I think 2017 could be a good year for that solar kill shot. Again, you can find a lot of David's work on Planet X News. Again, I'm going to leave up in the description box Planet X, the 2017 arrival. You can order it on Amazon. David, if I'm not mistaken, I think you also have a newer YouTube channel. Is that correct?
I do have a David Mead YouTube channel. It has some of my videos on it. And I have a website. I nicknamed it very generically, Writers Web Services. But basically, if people would just Google David Mead, Planet X, 2017, they could be directed either to my books or my website. And either one. And the books are on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, in 20 countries. They're ebooks, printed books, audio books. It's one of the few books on Planet X that's in all versions.
Wow. Well, Please order this book, ladies and gentlemen. Get yourself familiar with this topic. Again, a lot of events happening. Hard to keep up on a lot of these earth changes. I do my best. Earthquakes off the charts, volcanoes all over the place, the mass animal die-offs that we didn't get into profoundly in this talk, but I'm glad that David mentioned that. Certainly tie in pole shift, which actually Our Lady of La Salette warned us about, that the seasons would begin to change. We're seeing this odd weather. One of the more imminent signs of the 3 days of darkness, and the worst of the worst happening, by the way, in my opinion, the 3 days of darkness is actually going to be in April, is this warning, which will be in the first few months of a certain year. I'm not going to say it's 2017. It quite possibly could be, but it'll be kind of like a mini 3 days of darkness that Marie Julie warned of. But I appreciate you coming on, David. I look forward to getting you back on as some more events are happening. And all we can do is keep in faith and hope. That's one thing I want our listeners to understand, is not to succumb to fear, doubt, worry, despair. No. We have to keep our wings spread as an eagle in faith and hope. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe and God bless.
Hi, everybody. This is Steve Olson with WSO, and I'm here with special guest David Mead, author of Planet X, the 2017 Arrival. David, thank you so much for being part of our show.
Hi, Steve. Good to be here.
So, David, it's been a couple months since we last talked, and we were primarily talking about deep state issues the last time that we spoke, and we didn't spend a lot of time on Planet X, quite frankly. So I am so curious to find out, where is your head right now? I know you're talking about a 2017 arrival. What do you think's going on?
Well, a lot is happening, and a lot of things that we've discussed, you and I, in terms of photographic evidence, but a lot is also happening in terms of some private research I've done on 2017 from independent sources. Now, we all know that we have some allies. Father Malachi Martin said 2017. We have an ally in Bob Dean. I believe he said you can take it to the bank, 2017. But as I've been seeking independent confirmations. Now, you know that the way the analysis that I did was based on Revelation and Revelation chapter 12 and Revelation chapter 6. And you know, because the book of Revelation is a cryptogram set by the Almighty, and it is solvable according to the book of Daniel at the very end of time. And Planet X is hidden in plain sight. It's right before us in that book of Revelation. And that has indicated a very tight window of 2017, and specifically, in my opinion, October of 2017. But you will see events transpire before. But I've been looking for independent confirmations, and I've been looking all over, and I've been finding quite a few. And I'd like to maybe, if I may, just go over some of those independent confirmations on 2017.
The floor is yours, my friend. Go ahead.
Good. Now, this came back from a Rabbi Judah ben Samuel in the year 1217. And I'm going to quote, and then I'll explain. He said, when the Ottomans, the Turks, who were a power to be reckoned with, conquer Jerusalem, they will rule over Jerusalem for 8 jubilees. Afterwards, Jerusalem will become a no man's land for 1 jubilee, and then in the 9th jubilee, it will once again come back into the possession of the Jewish nation. And 1 jubilee later will be the year of the Messiah. So let's go to Leviticus 25. 1 jubilee period, and most people are aware of this, is 50 years. In other words, in the 50th year, back then in the Old Testament, every person regained ownership of his lands. Now, Rabbi Judah was shown the future. And it's strange, when he was asked where he received his wisdom from, and this happened the year before he passed away, he said, the prophet Elijah, who will precede the Messiah, appeared to me and revealed many things to me. And anyway, here are the facts. He was told that 300 years later was obviously 1517, and that was the year that the Ottoman Turks conquered Jerusalem. So 8 jubilees, 50 years times 8 jubilees are 400 years. Now, we now know by history, since they gained control in 1517, they held power for 400 years. They were conquered in 1917 by British military forces under General Allenby on Hanukkah, December 1917. And after this, the League of Nations, I believe, assigned the British mandate, the land of Israel, then called Palestine, and deeded Jerusalem to the British. So anyway, then he said Jerusalem will become a no man's land for 1 jubilee. Well, even after the Declaration of Independence by Israel on May 15th, 1948, in the War of Independence, the city of Jerusalem was a divided city. There was a strip of land between the state of Israel's control of Western Jerusalem and the Jordanian-controlled East Jerusalem. This strip of land was called the No Man's Land. But following the Six-Day War on June 17, 1967, the entire West Bank was conquered by the Israeli army, and the whole city of Jerusalem returned to the Jewish people. So according to this Jewish rabbi, at the end of the 10th Jubilee, 1967 plus 50, or 2017, this is the year of the Messiah. This is the year, in other words, he's saying, when the book of Revelation will be unsealed. So let me summarize this briefly, because it's complicated. So in the year 1217, an ancient Jewish rabbi named Samuel had a vision that outlined history from 1217 to 2017, of jubilees every 50 years. He said in his vision, Elijah in heaven told him they had 6 jubilees from 1217, and the world would arrive at 1517. The Turks would take Jerusalem. They did. 8 jubilee years later, 400 years, we would arrive at the year 1917. The British took Jerusalem, set the Jewish people free. This happened on schedule. It happened to the day. A British general flies a plane over Jerusalem, and the Turks took this as an omen. They believed it was a sign from God. They fled back to Turkey without firing a bullet. 1 jubilee year later, 1967, the Six-Day War would occur. The Jews overtook Jerusalem. They did. 1 jubilee, 50-year period later, in 2017, is the time when the day of the Lord commences, and this means the book of Revelation is opened and unsealed. Happens this fall. Planet X is an instrument of judgment, and of course the dates and times are all in my book, Planet X, the 2017 arrival. So the clock is ticking. Then I found about 12, and I'll just do these in bulletproof or bullet point fashion for you, about 12 proofs of a period of 2017 to 2024, a 7-year period. So see, the tribulation period, of course, lasts 7 years per the book of Revelation. Planet X is the calling card. So let's look at some bullet point facts. UN Resolution 181 was passed in November 1947 to declare that Israel should be reestablished. 2017 is 70 years from the decree to establish Israel. 2017 is 1 Jubilee year from the 1967 conquest of the city of Jerusalem. And the 2017 to 2024 equation is the only timeline where the tribulation of 2,550 days can begin on what's called a fall feast date and end on the same. Of course, as I've previously mentioned, the Revelation 12 sign in September 2017 marks the beginning of the tribulation period. It's a magnificent sign for Israel. according to Johannes Kepler, the founder of modern astronomy, 2024, 7 years from 2017, is the 6,000th year since creation. Of course, we just covered Rabbi Judah ben Samuel. He predicted 2017 as the year of the Messiah. Let's see, 2017 is 100 years from the Balfour Declaration and 120 years from the 1897 First Zionist Congress. The Great Pyramid of Giza points to 2017. See Isaiah 19:19. And that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt and a pillar at its border. Now this is one of the most magnificent, awesome signs that exist. There is a cross-country solar eclipse in August of this year, 2017, and also in the year 2024. This will completely cross the United States. It hasn't happened since 1776. And these form an X over the United States. The blood moons are that we've experienced in 2014 and 2015 and 2016 was called a sextet, 6 blood moons. These always, according to rabbinic tradition, according to the Talmud and the Jewish people, these are an omen portending, they're a harbinger for evil that may occur to Israel, such as a world war or whatever. But solar eclipses are considered a bad omen for the nations, the Gentile nations, of which the United States is chief. Anyway, these 2 eclipses in August of this year, in a few months, and also 7 years from now, these form an X over the United States. And the X intersects in the Midwest in a place called Little Egypt or Egypt. And this is very reminiscent of the judgments poured out, as well as the simultaneous deliverance of God's people in the book of Exodus. Now remember too, 70 years is a probation period of judgment in the Bible. It's the length of a generation. Look at the temple in Jerusalem. It was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD, 70 years after the birth of Jesus. Look at the period of captivity of the Jewish nation under Nebuchadnezzar in the Old Testament, exactly 70 years. And what did I just say? 1947, the UN resolution to reestablish Israel, plus 70 years, and we come to 2017. Now this is startling. Daniel 9:24, 70 Shavuots are decreed for your people and your city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So this Hebrew word is weeks, and this is the word Shavuot, which also refers to Pentecost. So 70 such festivals are, of course, 70 years. The beginning point is the commandment to restore Israel, the 1947 UN resolution, 1947 and 70 is 2017. So I would say that simultaneous occurrence of these events in 1 year, all pointing to 2017, is, I would think, odds of well over 1 trillion to 1. And I would just ask any listener, would you bet your life on anything less?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, I don't mean to take us into a segue, but we'll notice that Donald Trump and his entourage have been going to a couple of countries last week and this week, one of which was Saudi Arabia, the second of which was Israel, and the third one, the Vatican. Can you comment on that, David?
Right. He's meeting with the heads of all the 3 major faiths, other than Christianity, but he's meeting with the head of, of course, the Roman Catholics, the Jewish nation, and the Muslims, and representatives of 50 Muslim nations. I think it's very prophetic. I think my opinion has changed slightly about Donald Trump. I believe in a second book I wrote called the Coup d'etat against Donald Trump, and I still agree with my theorem and hypothesis here. But I said in the book, and I wrote half the book about surviving economically Planet X and surviving economically a global depression, but created by the New World Order as a false flag. But in the first half of the book, I talked about Donald Trump's lightning defeat of the New World Order, and he has in many respects done that because of the people he's appointed. And I don't think they're New World Order people for the most part. However, he has surrounded himself with some very hawkish military people. And the more I've been reading about Donald Trump himself, I came across an interview he did, and he was talking about how, I think it was last year, right before the election, how Russian jets were flying within 20 to 30 feet of U.S. jets in international waters or whatever. And Donald Trump said something to this effect. He said, this is very dangerous. And he said, I think it would take a phone call to Putin and to tell him to stop. And he said, if it didn't, and this is what I believe I heard, but I think he implied that if it didn't, those planes need to be shot down. And he's adopted the same stance with North Korea. And this is a crazy man in North Korea. This Senator McCain and others have talked about him, the head of this Democratic Republic of North Korea. We've been at war with them ever since 1953. There's been a state of war.
Know historically, audience, that everybody in the audience is that the Korean War never ended, and it's only a ceasefire.
Right, and there's something almost funny that I've got to tell you about this, because we always like to add something light to these conversations because they're so serious. But there is a mount called Paektu, which is on the border of North Korea and China. And few people realize that when North Korea and this madman that runs the country test a nuclear weapon, this blast sends a jolt throughout the Earth. It can trigger a volcanic eruption. And this Mount Paektu is a supervolcano located right on North Korea's border with China. So at this time, there's like 30 some odd volcanoes erupting around the world. But Mount Paektu in North Korea is on the brink of eruption. It's threatening the entire peninsula of Korea as well as Japan. It's a 9,000-foot supervolcano. It can cause a global catastrophe. In 946 AD, I believe, it ejected 45 megatons of sulfur, one of the most violent eruptions in human history. And back then, the capital of ancient Korea, the city of Kaesong, so terrified the emperor that he pardoned and set all the convicts free. They found volcanic ash from that eruption as far distant as the northern island of Japan and in the city of Nara in Japan, 1,100 kilometers away. So this nut job in Korea can actually trigger an eruption of a supervolcano in his country if he conducts too many underground tests. And anyway, getting back to Donald Trump's stance on this, it seems to me that in the last few weeks, I've been reading that this leader in North Korea has more or less stated, and I'm either quoting or paraphrasing, he's been test firing missiles, additional missiles, firing them into the Sea of Japan and so forth, and saying this is our answer to Trump's or to Washington's, quote, threats. So he is totally ignoring the world, international stability, common sense, and the warnings by the Trump administration, and he is more or less provoking the Trump administration. And I think, Obama or most presidents would have ignored it, but I just don't think Trump is going to ignore it. And I think, Alex Jones has stated about a month ago, I watched one of his videos and he was very emotional. And he said, he said 2 years ago, I almost moved my family out of the United States. He said, I now wish I had, because he said, this is absolutely crazy. This is insane. He said, we are on the verge of World War III. It's going to start in the Korean Peninsula. This man has this leader, this young man leader of North Korea.
Yeah, Kim Jong-un.
That's his name. Yeah, he's got, look at it. He's got, he can only fund or operate 2 cities with electricity, but he has 100,000 artillery sites in the country. He's got the 4th largest army in the world, and he's got these missiles with nuclear tips that can reach as far as Alaska or Hawaii. And I don't believe Trump is going to tolerate this for any length of time. And I think, as Alex Jones does, I think we are just possibly within weeks. I know that China has advised a lot of its citizens that were in the capital of North Korea to return to China. I know they've moved troops to the border and equipment. I think we are very, very close. While the average American goes to a sports bar and has dinner and a few drinks, we are very, very close to World War III beginning on the Korean Peninsula, with China also.
Right. Interesting little side note fact. I have a news channel called GNN that I do with a man named Arwayne Steiger. He's a great friend. And every time that we try to report on a Korean situation, they would block our videos.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what surprised me, there's a secret cabal.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, here's the deal. That not only is 80% of the mainstream media owned or controlled, and a former director of the CIA has stated this in so many words, that they are owned and controlled. Now, this doesn't include, I don't believe, Fox, but still Fox will only take things so far. To really get the news, you've got to watch your channel. You've got to watch YouTube. You've got to do independent research that's only available on the internet. And so I would even put Fox almost in the category of mainstream media to some extent. Even though it's accurate reporting, they limit the scope of their reporting to certain topics, and you can't discuss anything beyond it. For example, they don't discuss psychological profiling. They would never discuss the Committee of 300. This Committee of 300 is a sub-Rosa group. It was founded in England. This is where Queen Elizabeth said years ago to her major domo as he was leaving her estate because he was semi-retiring, Paul Burrell, she said, there are dark forces in this country of which we are not aware. Well, she's aware of them. She knows who they are. And it's the Committee of 300. It's a sub-Rosa group. Now, the Latin phrase sub-Rosa means under the rose. It's used in English to denote secrecy, confidentiality. It has an ancient history as a symbol of secrecy. But anyway, the committee normally issues their orders through the Royal Institute for International Affairs. This is a very dangerous group, the Committee of 300. They're well-dressed English gentlemen. I could name some of them. You know who they are. They consider Americans to be targeted population groups. They want a privileged lifestyle. They will maintain it at all costs. They are ruthless. They come across as very sophisticated, Savile Row type gentlemen on interviews, and when they're occasionally seen in the media or on TV, but they are ruthless and they want to maintain their hegemony over their lifestyle, their assets, and their control of the world. And they have formed opinions for years through the Royal Institute of International Affairs and the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations in London. This group had an interest in managing Britain's interest in World War II, but you wouldn't believe the details if I were to relate them to you. So I would tell the readers to do the research yourself here on the Tavistock Institute. Google it and enter the keywords Tavistock, perhaps conspiracy, perhaps mind control, whatever, and you'll see where a lot of this started.
How do you spell that Tavistock word?
Tavistock, Tavistock, Tavistock Institute for Human Relations in London. It's been around almost 100 years, and it has brainwashed a lot of us over here in the United States. And the media, just getting back to them, they would like to brainwash us to give up our right to bear arms. They want to brainwash us to give up the Constitution. They want to brainwash us to commit the rather treasonous act of allowing the UN to exercise control above the Constitution. But the committee, getting back to them, they issue their orders to the Royal Institute for International Affairs, and their counterpart in the United States is the Council on Foreign Relations, founded in the early 1920s. And this has been effectively affecting U.S. policy ever since then. So you've got a secret cabal, and this is part of Donald Trump's problem. And they operate openly, but without the approval, obviously, of the President or the National Security Council. They operate without congressional knowledge. You go back, they operate almost like the CIA. Alan Dulles, for example, he was a master of deception. And he used to do whatever his clients told him when he was a lawyer on Wall Street. And he carried this same mentality over to government service. And so it's the objective of both of my books to bring reality and understanding into this vast unknown area. What the CIA calls peacetime operations, these are covert activities. Controlling secret intelligence is the key. The enemy is communism or whatever the flavor of the day is. There's always an enemy. And most individuals are on a need-to-know basis. Very few individuals have the view from the top. This applies to Planet X too. Now, just keep in mind, most of these secret organizations originated in Europe or Britain. Some of them were cloaked in Freemasonry. Their reach extended into the Americas from there. And then through their relationships with undercover infrastructure, such as certain universities, very liberal universities, like Harvard, think tanks, the mainstream news, these people can influence governments all over the globe, and they don't react well to criticism. Look how they've reacted to President Trump, who really has fought them on almost every front. They don't like to be questioned. They consider themselves almost a new religious order. They're quite deluded. And they've been in power until President Trump took office. I'm talking about the deep state or the secret cabal. And these are ruthless men in positions of high power behind the scenes. And this is another reason, one of many reasons, why Planet X has been surrounded by so much disinformation and deception. And there's probably 30 or 40 people in the government that actually even know the details. They've compartmentalized it to a very high level. I call it the Nibiru Search Committee. I don't know what they term it, but there's a very small collection of people that get all the intelligence from the South Pole, Observatory, that get all the intelligence from these valid reports that you and I occasionally hear about, these random sequence sightings, pictures, films of Planet X in this hemisphere. They collate all that data and they compartmentalize it, and they know the details. And but remember, all this originated from the city of London. It's a Masonic lodge. The city's emblems all originate from the ancient Egyptian or Babylonian witchcraft. The City of London Corporation is a private financial and banking center which controls the City of London. And the Bank of London controls the Bank of International Settlements, which controls all the world's central banks. And this is another problem. And Donald Trump can't even touch this. This is beyond the scope of almost any president. But the fact that we have this Federal Reserve, and before we had the Federal Reserve, we had a huge trade surplus. There was no income tax. We had great unemployment. We had a gold-backed dollar. We had so much before we had the Federal Reserve, but that's a whole different story.
It is. We should take that off. We should take that off to another show, because I still don't think people get it. And I'll just finish the Federal Reserve point in debt is you can never get out of debt in the system, because they actually print your money and count it as debt.
Exactly. And then they collect interest.
We never have money anymore. We don't have money like printed money backed by gold or backed by some other asset or even by labor. What we have is a petrodollar supported, a fiat currency supported by petroleum, and our lockdown on the banking system worldwide. And what that means is, guys, let me give you an example. It's almost like I say, hey, Dave. Dave comes to me and says, I need $1,000. So I just write a blank check for $1,000, nothing in the account, right? Then I illegally go in and pretend like I have $1,000 in the account. And then I make David pay me back with interest. This is why we can never become out of debt. It's a slave debt system, and the Federal Reserve is a private organization. It is not a government organization. Dave?
Right. It's about as federal as Federal Express. It's owned by, I've got a list of it somewhere in my notes. It's owned by about 23 international banks, Israeli banks, London banks, and it's owned by these banks are owned by some of the wealthiest bankers in the world, including the Rothschilds. And they control many of these banks through a series of interlocking directorates and so forth. Nobody knows the true wealth of the Rothschilds. They're undoubtedly the wealthiest family on earth. And, but in any case,
but every time you spend $1, just kind of think of this as if you're an American, even if you're a UK citizen. Every time you spend a note sterling, or you spend $1, what you're doing is every time I spend that dollar, the Rothschild empire gets a little piece of it.
Oh yeah. You couldn't even trace it. And the House of Windsor has major banking holdings in London as well too. They're probably trillionaires, I would think. The press says they're billionaires. I would think they are worth a great deal more than that, but nobody knows because so much of it is hidden.
Right. And the thing that happens
So
with David and I, guys, is that whenever we start talking about Planet X, it's impossible not to look at the political structure, the prophetical and eschatological structure, and tie it back to the actual event itself. And so, just so you know, when we go deep state, this is all related. Go ahead, David.
Sure. NASA, the acronym among us, is never a straight answer. I did a recent article for Planet X News. I'll just tell you a few bullet points on it. You might find it interesting. But here's the bottom.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Planet X News. This is Scott from the Nibiru channel. It is July 17th, 2017, approximately 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I just wanted to go over some information and get a quick update on what is occurring with this space weather situation that we underwent yesterday. Now, our current conditions right now for our solar wind, it's about 735 kilometers per second, which is equivalent to approximately 1.6 million miles per hour. Now, we're already starting to feel some of the effects of this space weather. There have been considerable amounts of earthquake outbreaks, and a lot of them are occurring in the Alaskan area, the Canadian area, and the west coast of the United States. Now, we're going to be going over all of that information briefly, but I want to take a look at some of the articles that were on space weather. And one of their lead articles states 80% chance of minor storms. NOAA forecasters say there is an 80% chance of a minor G1 class geomagnetic storm on July 17th as Earth moves through the wake of the CME that hit our planet's magnetic field yesterday. Now, I'm going to move down here to this beautiful photograph. A lot of people around the world were seeing beautiful auroras. And even though these auroras are very nice to look at, the pictures are absolutely amazing, kind of like postcards. This is definitely the sign of geomagnetic storms. Now, moving down here to this chart. This chart right here, this was put together by a citizen scientist by the name of Rob Stammes. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And he is from the Polar Light Center of Lofoten, Norway. And these were some of the anomalies that he detected in the ground beneath his feet. He states that his instruments recorded a surge in ground currents shortly after the CME hit. He explains, "The green curve denotes electricity flowing through the soil." Very, very interesting. I'm going to go ahead and click on this for a second. So he was charting a lot of information here as this CME came in. Excuse me. Now the magnetometer declination, he's showing here the current ground current. He's showing here. He has the exact time and UTC time. Pretty interesting information. Very interesting. So at least we know somebody was at least charting this. Very interesting. We're going to go ahead and move into some of this earthquake information. Now, we're going to take a look at the USGS, and things are changing very, very rapidly as far as the earthquake situations are occurring. We had a magnitude 6.2 occur right off the coast of Russia over here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here and take a look at this. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I was having some internet issues first thing this morning. YouTube even had some serious issues, technical issues, late yesterday and into this morning. Magnitude 6.2, right off the coast of Russia. There was a small swarm of the earthquakes, magnitude 5.1, and then a 4.4. And we're going to go ahead and back off of this, move over to the west coast of the United States. And you can start to see there's a lot of activity right along the San Andreas Fault and right over on the other side of the Sierra Nevada mountains in Nevada. A lot of earthquakes occurring. You could see this straight swarm straight up through the state of Alaska. And then there was a pretty decent sized earthquake right here, magnitude 3.8, Haines Junction, Canada, relatively shallow, 10 kilometers. But the earthquakes are rippling through our planet. There was a small swarm of earthquakes up here in the Lincoln, Montana area, also here in Yellowstone, and also a pretty decent swarm of earthquakes in Oklahoma. Kind of a rare earthquake right here. I believe this was in Missouri, magnitude 1.9, really nothing to write home about. Magnitude 2.8 in Blaine, Tennessee. Once again, kind of a rare earthquake there. And then there was an earthquake in the right off the coast of Mexico, right here, and it was a magnitude 4.1. Usually the USGS, they don't report these earthquakes here, but they picked this one up and they reported it. Now, something that is kind of startling to me, what's happening, are these earthquakes swarming down here in the Puerto Rico area, Santo Domingo. This is getting a little slow, my computer here. All around Puerto Rico. You see they have an earthquake right here, magnitude 4.1 right off the coast. Magnitude 4.1. Yeah, so they have a pretty good swarm of earthquakes all around Puerto Rico right here. So there's no doubt the earthquake situation is picking up. I believe over the next couple of days we're probably going to see a lot more as far as the earthquakes go. Now, there have been some other earthquakes that are just taking place